Welcome back to Clubhouse Chronicles, the place where the Central Illinois scene gets loud, proud, and unfiltered. I'm Twitt, your host with the most, ready to spin you the stories, the sounds, and the struggles behind the bands that are making waves here, right in your backyard. This show is powered by our friends over at Broken Record Music Club, your favorite independent record label, bringing you music for whatever you are going through. With that, let's buckle on up because this isn't just a podcast. It's your front row ticket to the heart of the indie music scene. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we venture away from the usual music guests we have on the show. Today, we've got a guest who's a wizard with a lens, capturing moments that'll make your heart do backbends. He's the guy behind the camera, making magic come alive with a keen eye for detail that'll make your jaw dive. Hailing from Urbana, where the creativity flows, he's snapping and filming wherever the light goes. Whether it's a concert, a shoot, or a vibe to convey, he frames it in a cinematic way. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for the one, the visionary, the story spinner, Austin Corley, a.k.a. Camera Corley. Welcome to the Clubhouse, Austin.
Thank you. I did not expect the poetry, but I appreciate it.
Man, you got to do something to grab them, right?
You got me.
What a hook, right?
Yeah, you hooked me.
With that, let's just get right into it. So, Austin, you're a cameraman, a well-known cameraman. I found you on Instagram and I fell in love with all the photos you take in the scene. I've always wanted to know, like, where did it all start? What was the photography and videography something you were always passionate about?
Like media itself is something I've always been passionate about. When I was a kid, I felt like every kid that grew up with video games, I wanted to make video games. And then that kind of went into filmmaking and more like media driven stuff. And kind of in college, I realized that I want to make films and I want to do more narrative stuff. But it's hard to do that when you don't have the time or the money. So sometimes as somebody who does a video, you have to your side gig. And I feel like I found my side gig and it's like kind of become my main gig. So it's exciting. But getting into the music scene, I had no history with the music scene at all until November of 2023. I saw an Instagram post for the Mirror, took my friends. I was a little scared because I'd never been to something like that. But I took my friends and I realized just then I had a little point and shoot. It wasn't anything serious, but I took some pictures and I realized that I want to keep doing this. I feel like this is even if it wasn't a path in terms of like my career, it was a path in terms of like me as an artist. And I felt like at that point in my life, I hadn't pursued that enough. It was very much like, I got to get through college. I got to do this. But then I realized I don't have the inspiration to, I don't know, make the things that I even want to make. So I kind of had to find that. And I feel like the scene has like really kind of given me that.
It's very apparent in the stuff that you shoot and even the video stuff that you've done, which we'll get into a little bit later. But I want to rewind a second here because in my research, I saw that you started in college, like you were saying, going through like a film and television production program. Was your goal since you were a kid to always get into more of the film side of things?
So I was always interested in film. It was funny because when I was a kid, I mean, I guess I didn't think it was weird because I was a kid and it was just what I did. But I was always watching like the behind the scenes, like DVD features. And I love that stuff because there's a curtain you get to pull back and you don't get to see that very often as a kid. So I kind of like love that. And with art, I always was a creative person. I like really was always into like video games were my big inspiration as a kid. And that interactivity is just like, I don't know, it's really good for your creativity. I mean, could also be bad if you play the same games for 20 years. But for me, it was something it was like a hobby. I got to like explore what I liked and it made me want to make those things. Just like with movies, I want to make those movies. And that kind of just pivoted me right into filmmaking for my major because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I went in to community college. I was 17. I was taking community college classes in high school. I was getting my gen eds out of the way. So when I was in college, I get to just focus on whatever I pick, but I didn't know what I was going to do yet. So I was like, you know what? Journalism. I like writing. And then I realized I didn't like writing at all. So that's kind of like the weakest link for me in terms of like the narrative stuff too. It's like I have so much inspiration like here I can translate it with a camera a lot better than I can with a pencil, you know. Eventually that went into broadcast journalism because you can be a journalist but still be behind the camera, and that I found interesting. So I got into that, and then I realized, why am I doing this? I want to do a narrative. I want to do narrative stuff. I'm just gonna focus on that. And luckily, EIU, where I went to college, very small school, but it had a very recent video production program that just like started, and it included not just television production, which is they had always had because they have a TV station there, WEIU, but narrative and then documentary filmmaking stuff. So my entire time there, I was just all my classes were project based, and I was just making things. But I feel like I never really connected with it. I felt like I was just kind of going through the motions. I feel like a lot of kids feel this in college. I didn't really get into it until the year after I graduated. Like I made my final project. I loved that final project. And then getting into photography and realizing that I can create things for myself and not for an assignment. That was like a big important thing for me. The photography was for me at first. I got into it because I was collecting like old digital cameras. I wanted to collect my life. I wanted to see that because I feel like for a little bit in my life, I didn't take photos of myself or anything. So kind of capturing my life, and the music stuff was part of that life. And it just kind of like snowballed into what it is now. It's really exciting because with the documentary and with other projects I've been working on, like I get to do that narrative. I get to do that documentary. I mean, I get what I paid for school. You know what I mean? So that's good at least.
In the end, it all pays off, right? Like,
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, I feel,
that led to the student loans, but
I mean, it's a struggle, especially like I definitely understand that as I was in college, like I had something that I was going into, and was my parents sat me down and were like, you need to pick a major. So I picked it, and it was mechanical engineering. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I'm good at math. I'm good at science. Like if it's hands-on, I'll be interested. Lo and behold, couple of years later, you really find your true passion, which is being in the scene and being in music, and
yeah,
that just consumes you. And you're like, God, I wish I didn't spend all that money on on my other degree.
it was an interesting path for me because I feel like, in a way, my parents, they didn't like exactly push it on me, but they really wanted me to, if I could, save the money and go to community college and kind of get the ball rolling in terms of my career kind of early. But that also didn't give me the opportunity to kind of like grow here because I was not ready for those decisions. Even at 20, I wasn't ready for those decisions. Looking back, I have a lot of regrets in terms of time wasted on things that I knew weren't my passions, but they also got me here, so I can only appreciate them, I guess.
You're here as a result of all the decisions you made leading up
Yep.
to this. So it's paid off.
Yeah, it
So
has.
take me back to when you're taking this first mirror show, right? You're getting introduced. What ultimately led you to like take that leap, take that jump into it, even though it's not something you're familiar with? It's, you're so used to being just like behind the camera in a film sense. What was the motivation there? Just
Well,
because, or
it was a lot more than just a business thing. It was a lot more than just my passion thing. It was kind of I had to grow up thing. I feel like growing up was a very like kept to myself person. People I would stick around weren't necessarily people I should have been around. And I feel like a lot of the time I ended up just like never feeling like I belonged anywhere. I was tired of that feeling. Sometimes when you're like that, you kind of put that pressure on somebody else, and that can be bad for them. And it just like, I need to make sure that I'm comfortable with myself. So the scene was something for me that's like really, really positive to me, because it's like, at the end of the day, if I'm frustrated, if I'm excited, I can go to these shows and I can get my feelings out, whether that's talking to people or just experiencing the music and stuff. And for me, at that moment in my life, I really needed that. I just came back I had to move home for like 2 weeks in between leases. And I live in a really small town, and there's nothing. There's nothing going on in my college town when school's not going on, but there's definitely nothing going on in my hometown at that time. So I was just sitting there for 2 weeks and just stewing, and I was frustrated. I'm like, I need something more in my life. I can't just like go to school and that be my life, you know? So finding the shows really was like, okay, I can go and I can meet people, and it could be a like a positive experience. And it's not just because we're in a class together; it's because we choose to enjoy this music together.
Yeah, that part of the scene is what's so great because I came from a background in athletics. Oh, it was always competitive, right? Like even your best friends, like you're competing with in certain aspects. And when I got into the music scene, everyone was just so accepting, even though it was like your first time at a certain venue or a certain place. It's always like, oh, hey, nice to meet you. And everyone's so friendly and kind. And being in a difficult position in your life is always like getting involved in a scene like this is, I know the gravity of that. So I know how much
Yeah,
the scene means to you.
yeah, it's changed a lot for me, and kind of with what you're saying. I remember kind of my second show, I was like that. I went and I had this very awkward vibe. I was sitting in the corner, like resting bitch face, like nobody knows me, nobody likes me. But I had a VHS camera, and people saw it and they're like, what the hell is that? And it started conversations, and I feel like that was what I needed, because like I just didn't have that confidence. I don't know why. I still don't sometimes. And now we're, hosting shows and everything, and people are in my basement. I still feel that way. It's something that like this has definitely helped with. It's a work in progress still, for sure. The camera really helps. It's like a kind of a mask in a way sometimes.
But I mean, the mask is also able to shoot some very beautiful pictures and capture the scene. And when I was going through all your work, and I mean, not just for this podcast, right? Like I've followed you for a while.
Mhm.
Your style just really stands out. There's always a bunch of like vibrancy in your pictures and the way you edit. It's filled with color and everything feels warm, like kind of the feeling you describe as you're there at these shows. Like it's very apparent in your pictures. How have you gone about developing your style as a photographer, especially because it was something that is not necessarily familiar to you?
Okay, so I have, there is like a bit of a way I go about it. I mean, obviously, for me, it was very much trial and error. I'm the type of person, I'm not like sitting there waiting for the shot. I will take 4,000 shots in a night. Like, I will just go for it. And that's the beauty of digital. I can just do whatever I want with that. So that's always been good. So I can just get whatever I want, whenever I want. But the thing for me is, rather than, there's kind of a couple ways you can go about photography, and like, I think it comes from my more of like a film narrative background. I want to tell a story and like document a feeling rather than document an event, document a show. So when I go to a show, I'm not trying to say, hey, this existed at some point. This is a record of the barn. This is who played here. No, you look at my photos and I feel like, at least to me, you know what it felt like to be there. And that's the big thing for me, is I want to kind of have it communicate the feeling of the music, because the music, I mean, it's hard to like explain, but I feel like when you see this, my stuff, especially stuff in like the barn with a lot of light streaks and stuff, I feel like that stuff, it just like encapsulates what the energy of the room is like. And it's just really cool that there's like two sides of it. There's the performance side of like the bands and everything, and then there's the really cool technical side of the way that I do the photography and the way that the light reacts to all the light in the room and my flash. And it's just like, at every moment of this, I'm like loving it. And it's like, I find myself interested in the music side, and I find myself interested in the photography side. It's like continually inspired by just doing this stuff.
It's a
Great.
match made in heaven.
It really is. It's like, I don't know, I don't know, as a videographer, when I shoot video, it's fun because I look and I see that I'm creating something. But when you're in something that is already super compelling to be in anyways, it's it's absolutely crazy, especially when you can record like such an intense and such a raw encapsulation of what it was like to be there. Like that's what I wanted. That's what I want my pictures to be. That's what I wanted the mirror to be like. And I feel like that's kind of what I'm able to capture, luckily.
Speaking of the mirror, I got a chance to watch that mini documentary that you made on the mirror. For those of you that don't know, the mirror is a DIY venue in the Urbana Champaign scene. And it was just so, like, as we talked about earlier, the mirror played a pretty significant part in getting you into the scene. So in watching this and now hearing your experience and getting started here, the way that you cared for the scene was the care you put into making the documentary and talking with the bands and combining some of the performance and some interviews with the band members. Can you talk more about just the creative process for that and how deeply this venue has impacted your local scene and the others in it?
There was always ideas for me to make a documentary of some sort. Not even necessarily about the mirror. I think the first idea was the barn, just because they'd been hiring me so much as a photographer, so I just kept being there. And I kept getting just like random footage of stuff. And I did end up putting together this short little video for them, just kind of like an encapsulation of the night. It was like started with the setup, went through the sets, and then had them kind of closing up shop and everything. It was fun, but I never really like went into that because I just didn't have time for it. But near the end of the semester, when the year was going to end, they wanted to commission me for a documentary. So I was able to not only just have it be a passion project, but it was a freelance project. And I think for me, like the mirror is like, it's something that I literally recently have used in job interviews. Hey, this is what I make. If it's not, exactly what you're wanting me to make, you'll at least be able to see what I can bring to the table. That's kind of like what my take was with it. But yeah, the mirror, it kind of started from this idea of just like capturing the last two nights. At first, it was going to be more of a retrospective, like, hey, how did it start? How did we get here? But I realized that, I mean, it's interesting. I feel like people would like it, but it's also not very like the mirror. You don't sit down and, read like a book at the mirror. It's not that kind of vibe. So I wanted it to like kind of encapsulate how it felt. And the only way that I felt that that would work was doing like a live concert documentary. So have the show itself happen all the way through, not in order, but it happened. You got to see most of it, and in that, when it's appropriate, add the context that we want. And I think it was very fun. It was interesting seeing everyone's like how in they were on the documentary. There were some people that were like, and this is something that they're just gonna make and it's gonna go somewhere. And that's fine because I understand that's how it goes with like these bands sometimes. Sometimes people have an idea and it's like you sit down and it's a silly interview and you're like, this is never gonna go anywhere. It's never gonna get uploaded anywhere. I was able to get through that and like through the jokey interviews and through the chaos of the mirror. Honestly, I feel like I was able to like really, I don't know, encapsulate what I wanted to show, because like that, the passion that I had in it is the passion that I feel like I just feel in the scene, period. It's just like everyone is excited to be here, everyone wants to do this all the time. And I mean, it's inspired me enough to not just make content and make films and but make shows and stuff. So it's like it's been really good for me, and can't really thank anyone else other than the mirror for that.
The emotion even in the doc, like there was one band that broke down, like how much the venue meant to them, and to know that that's the impact within the scene, like just shows how important it is to the students, to the bands, but also just to music in general. I feel like that's something that's been really absent in music is, you're going to go see the bigger bands at the bigger venues, and you're going to go there with your one friend or even by yourself, and you're just going to enjoy the show on your own. But it truly is like a a living organism. You would go in, and you felt this throughout the entire documentary, that everyone was like kind of one. They're dancing, they're screaming at the bands, they're getting into the whole night together. And to feel that sense of community, I'm sure, is just off the charts, especially as you're coming into yourself in music and finding yourself as an individual as well.
The funny thing for me that I really enjoy is, making it, and then it's kind of like a yearbook. You can kind of go back and you can. I remember watching it with the guys who lived at the Mirror venue. We had like a little watch party right before they moved away. When we were watching it, everyone was like, "Oh, there's them, there's that person," and it's just like that's a great feeling that you can watch this and be like, "Yeah, these were memories that we made here." And this history that we made here. It's really fun and exciting to be able to capture stuff like that, and not. I feel like none of what I did with Doc felt forced, and that's something that like sometimes with my narrative stuff, I feel like I have to force myself to want to create that, force myself to want to do that kind of thing. Because honestly, I mean, I went to school for it, but I'm not ready for it. I don't have the production experience to do narrative film yet. So I am trying to learn the best way I can. I feel like this documentary style, I mean, I don't know. Documentary is weird. I still think of it as narrative, at least mine, because I completely am changing the order of things. And I don't think that's necessarily true to certain things, but it is a document. It's a living document, like I said earlier, but it's not just documenting, it's capturing what it is. And that's the important part, not the documentation of it, but the documentation of the feeling of it.
Sometimes the best way to just do anything is you just got to do it. Is rip the Band-Aid off and just kind of go. Thankfully, I really try to apply this. I mean, with this podcast, with even my record label, I just was like, you know what? I'm going to do this just because I think I can, and I think it would be really cool. Obviously, like you said, it's a constant process of evaluating yourself, and some days are good days, some days are bad. But at the end of the day, you took the leap. A lot of people don't even take the leap. So you're so much further ahead.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is I feel like for me, the way that I went through school, I felt like I was always ahead. And then now I feel like weirdly, I don't know why I feel like I'm behind. I felt like I caught up in this terms of like schooling, and then I plateaued as like a person. And I feel like these past 2 years have really been a time where I'm like becoming like a person that can, not just a person, but an artist. Because that's something that like I always struggled with in school because I liked doing it. I found it interesting, the production aspect. I think growing up, I always came at it from this like nerdiness perspective. Like I'm interested in how it's made, how it's done, and not necessarily this artful thing. But with photography and especially like music photography and videography, it's like the best of both worlds. It's like it lets me kind of communicate my feelings with art, which I always struggled with growing up. I couldn't like draw. I was never good at drawing. I always would give up. I mean, it's probably my fault that I never tried, but like that always made me feel bad. I would always be the one like, can you draw this for me? Can you do this for me? But I feel like now people say to me, can you take this picture for me? And that makes me feel good because it's like I am known for something. I'm known for being good at something. And that's, I don't know, it's a good feeling.
And you've done a lot of great work this year. You recently posted your whole like highlight reel from 2024. And you got to work on a lot of really, really cool stuff, and to see all these different shots and videos you were able to take throughout the year was really amazing. As you've kind of gone throughout the year, did you have any particular favorite project that you got to work on, or was it the Mirror doc, or was there other things that you really enjoyed?
I would say like definitely this year is the year of the Mirror and the adjacent projects that I have done with it. But there are a lot of other projects I was happy to work on. I worked with Stancheck to do a music video for them. It was my first vertical music video, which isn't done very usually, and it was a bit of a challenge for me. But I liked the challenge and I really liked how it came about. It was just like one of the most unique things. We went out and the idea was that, but I wanted to like encapsulate the feeling of like Midwest emo, like get the vibe of it, not just the the sound, but the vibe itself. So we all went to my family farm and we went out on an open field and brought a drum set there, set it up. They all just were, playing without, any power, but they were going for it, and it was fun. It was one of the most interesting shoots I've done for sure, and it was just like my idea, my concept, my execution, and I did it all myself. I had no support. We were listening to it was so funny. We were woefully unprepared. The original idea was I was going to be playing it from my car so they could hear the music from the car, but when he's playing the drums, it was way too loud and you couldn't hear the car. So they had luckily they had AirPods, so it was two of them each having an AirPod and just kind of playing together, and the rest of them were kind of just faking it and trying to stay playing along with them. So it was trial and error for sure. And there actually is a whole second video that I haven't edited yet. It wasn't the one that they commissioned for me. I just wanted to shoot it as well since we were there. I really want to do that one. It's just like I have so much stuff on the back burner right now that it's challenging to go back, especially when there's like nothing pressing. And unfortunately, they already released their album and stuff. So, but I think eventually, once I have some free time, I'm gonna catch up and get it because it's just as cool as the other one, and I feel like people need to see it. I will say another thing that I haven't really talked much about, but is coming at some point. I can't promise anything. I want it to be at the January 25th at the Treehouse show. I want to release it, but I don't know if that's going to happen yet. But I do have a photo book that I'm going to release. It's called Reflections, the Mirror and Beyond. Basically, it's a collection of every single event that I've ever shot. It went from that first night at the Mirror. I have actual pictures and actual edits I did of those pictures from that night, and then a few little words that I put in there, but most of it is photos. And it even shouts out the Mirror documentary about halfway through. And it ends right at the end of that May semester, at the end of the final barn show. So we got room for another one at some point, and definitely want to try to make a treehouse photo book. I think that would be great. I just, honestly, with that place, I haven't really taken a lot of photos because I'm so busy actually doing stuff for this show. So that's one of my New Year's resolutions is kind of do more stuff like that for treehouse specifically.
The photo book sounds amazing. There's not a whole lot of like physical media like that out there.
Yeah.
I think there's certain people that do it, like Pass Down Magazine. I am a huge fan of what Pass Down Magazine does with their like they just cover the Midwest and mostly Illinois. And I mean, I get blown away by those, but like an actual photo book from these house shows to document it, that's another level, I think. And I'll talk to you. I might want one.
Yeah, I'm technically still like the photographer for Pass Down, but we don't do a lot of Urbana stuff. Pass Down has been great for me because especially in the beginning when they started out, it was a lot of local Urbana stuff, specifically kind of focused around the barn and stuff that was happening there. And it just was like, yeah, like you said, having my picture on a piece of paper that someone else printed and I didn't do anything to. It was just really cool. And now with the photo book, just having this polished representation of 6 months of my life, I couldn't be more grateful about it. It's going to be really great. I honestly, though, I mean, I'm glad to hear what you said, though, because I was a little bit worried about the tangibility of selling it because it costs a little bit to produce. So it's like, do I want to sell it? Is it going to be worth the amount of? I'm not trying to make a profit on it, but I also want to like, if I'm putting the work in, I want to be making a little bit off of it. I'm hoping that with like the cost and everything that I've been able to get, that it'll sell well. So I guess we'll see when it comes out, but we're gonna try to push in-person sales as much as possible because I don't know. I think that's a lot more interesting than ordering it from the website.
I think the right people will want it, That's the other thing too, is it might not be for everyone, but it's almost like that yearbook kind of feel where
Yeah.
hey, I was here for almost every show. I kind of want something to commemorate that. And boom, you're giving them that product, which is great for you and for the scene.
Well, and it's like after one of the Treehouse shows, Thomas from Stand Check was in our kitchen. I was showing it to him, and he was pointing out bands that didn't even exist anymore. And he's like, "Man, it's good to see this stuff in here. You know, it's good to see these memories." And he was, like I said with the video, he was just pointing out people. It's like, "Oh, this guy's here, this guy's there," and it's just nice to think that like my art can strike up these conversations, strike up these memories, and be such a positive thing in people's lives.
And it definitely is. So you just kind of talked about some goals you have for 2025. You've also been able to work with a lot of the great talent in Central Illinois, like you said, Stand Check, 4x4 Animal Style, Wide Orbit, all groups that I think are trending very positively and are growing significantly. As you kind of continue down this path with your photography and videography, do you have any like dream bands or artists that you would like to shoot for?
I kind of shoot within my means, like I don't like try to dream ahead in terms of like that stuff. For starting out, it was Kangaroo Court was the band that I wanted uh, to do that for because I felt like
They're great.
I grew up on King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, and I never heard anyone else inspired or sounding like that band. And one day I pulled up to the barn, and it shocked me. Like I had never heard somebody like also enjoy that. Like I said, I come from a place that wasn't a lot of community, let alone music community. So seeing that was exciting, and I don't know, they're such a compelling band, like just like in terms of their music, in terms of their presentation, in terms of just the live show that they hold, like it's always a good time. So that that was definitely the like goal at first. I think more than bands, I think my goal now is to really start pushing more to Chicago. I don't want to like make that my goal. I think it's important for me to, while I'm here, enjoy the scene, help the scene grow, and support the people in this scene because I mean they're only going to be here for however many years that they're in Urbana because you're not. Most people aren't always here for very long,
What?
which is the unfortunate reality of it. But like my goal moving forward is definitely to just make more connections in Chicago, make more connections outside of Chicago. I would love to, yeah, that's a great one. My goal definitely for 2025 would be to tour with someone at some sort, not necessarily going, a long distance, but like a couple shows in a string of places I've never been before. I am I was a homebody growing up, so I never really went anywhere. I've only been to like a few states, so it's always been something I've wanted to do, and especially if it's for something I'm so passionate about, I think it'll be 4 times as fun. And especially since I'll be doing video, I mean, I'm not gonna have a bad time doing it.
If you could get involved in touring, that's a good time just to be around it. Even for me, because with Jenny Scare, I kind of went. We did a little East Coast run, and it was a lot of driving, but man, it was like the best 3 days, 4 days. It was so just cool to be around them and see them in a different space and see their music impact other people. And for you to have the same effect with your photography and videography, I'm sure would be just mind blowing.
Well, that's the fun part about this. It's a symbiotic relationship. It's like I wouldn't be doing all this if it weren't for the music. And I feel like these artists, they thrive off of this. I hate the word content, but you use it a lot now. But they thrive off of what you can create for them because you creating that is kind of validating their art as well. And that's a really cool feeling for me that I could post somebody and they're happy about it, so they repost it, and that gets me happy because my stuff's getting reposted to accounts that are way bigger than mine, and that's never really been like a focus for me. But like the fun part about Instagram is specifically Urbana, I think it's been really cool. I feel like my growth on social media, while it's been like kind of slow, I feel like I don't have a very big follower base. I have 800 right now. While I think it's been kind of slow, it's all like real people and real people that are in the scene or adjacent to the scene or interested in my art. And that's a good feeling because it's like I feel like a lot of people think of social media as this hollow, like how many likes can I get? But it's like I don't care about the likes. I care about the amount of interactions that I'm getting, the amount of opinions and stories and conversations I'm starting. I feel like that's the fun part for me. Like I like the validation of my art getting like received by an audience is like so so good to me. Like it makes me feel great. And the fact that like I'm able to like even with like my in-review stuff, I'm able to post this with this giant list of bands and half the bands will repost my stuff because they're like, yeah, I love working with them. I like that's a great feeling for me. And I just like wanna hold on to that. I want to hold on to this passion because I feel like you talked about it earlier, like sometimes there's this like hustle idea mentality where I gotta be good. I gotta do good. I gotta do this, do better than somebody else. But it doesn't matter. I'm just making things. Other people are making things, and we're all supporting each other. It's a great feeling. There's like no competition in the scene, and I really love that part.
It's the high tide raises all ships kind of
Yeah.
mantra. Everyone is an artist, and if you support each other, like obviously this is a very thriving scene where a lot of people see benefit in showcasing their art in whatever capacity that is. And as it grows, like everyone, as long as you're supporting everyone, like everyone will come up too, and that's a good feeling.
Yeah, okay. There is one thing that I wanna like talk about that I feel like I haven't had like the platform to necessarily talk about it, and it's really not very serious, but it's also just like something that I think is really important to my art specifically is like
Yeah.
there's a lot of photographers in the Urbana scene, and they're all great. But what most of them do not do is edit their photos. And I find it absolutely crazy that we are making these amazing photos, taking these awesome, very high quality photos and not touching them. I think it's very silly because I feel like my mood, the presentation of my stuff, it's in the photos when I take them, but I feel like you get that like aura from editing. I think people really need to try it out because it's fun. Like just another part of photography, and I think some people don't think about that. And as cool as it is to be able to perfectly expose a picture first try and not have to edit anything, my work wouldn't be the same if I didn't go in and tweak it and turn it into the feeling that it gives. It's one of my favorite parts of it. I mean, I love snapping photos in the moment, but sitting and going through them and finding out what worked and what didn't work is the fun part. I think it really makes you a better photographer in terms of like every aspect of it. Just like making sure that, yeah, like I said, exposure and everything is right. But with editing, you don't have to. So it's like, oh, you have a flawed image, you can turn that into something. And that's something that I've loved doing is sometimes I take these crazy photos where the flash goes wrong and half the screen is brightened because somebody else's flash went off right when I took my photo and turned that into this kind of scary looking photo of somebody like highlighted in a flash, but it's still interesting. It's still just as much of a picture as the original version is, but it's just like I feel like it's so much more compelling. And with art, you really want to stand out. Not to say that like you can't stand out with just your composition, but I think it's something that a lot of people could like step up and elevate their looks. And I think it's something that was really important to me because that was always the thing I loved before I got into photos was doing the colors and getting that vibe down. That's why I love like VHS aesthetics and tape cameras. Like you don't have to do the work to get the vibe that you want off those, but it's also only works for a certain vibe that you want to give. Like it doesn't work for every project. So editing, just like VHS doesn't work for every project, digital camera photos doesn't work for every environment. It doesn't always look right. It looks like too clean sometimes. And I think it doesn't match the grit of what DIY is and what the scene is. And I think adding that grit back is important.
You heard it here, folks. If you're a photographer in the scene, edit your damn photos.
Edit your photos.
For the love of God, please. All right, Austin. Well, these two questions are the last two questions that I have, and I kind of ask them to everyone that comes on this pod. And we're going to start with, what are some of your favorite things about the Central Illinois music scene, and what has your experience been like being a part of it? Now, you've kind of done a great job answering a lot of parts about this, but is there maybe one thing in particular that really stands out to you, or one element of it?
I always go back to like community. And while I think I have found my community, I think sometimes this community can be very much like we're all at a show, but we're all kind of in our own bubble sometimes there, or you're with your friend groups and you're not really talking to everyone else. But I realize that it's not always like that. And sometimes a lot of people are just in their head just as much as I am when I'm at those shows. So I think like the big thing for me is just how comfortable the scene lets you be when you're there. There's never a pressure. There's never this like negativity. I feel like there are definitely places in the scene where you could see that and get that, but that's not where you're meant to be. So you just got to find somewhere where you are. And luckily with the scene here is there's so many options. It's like it's crazy. I find it absolutely insane that every weekend there's shows, and it's just like a what's on the menu this week. You get to choose whatever you want, and that's great for the bands because there's so many bands that are just getting gig after gig after gig, and they get to keep playing in front of people because that's what you want to do when you're a band. And it's just the symbiotic relationship of the scene, whether it's photographers and musicians, whether it's musicians and the audience, and then the audience and me, like as a photographer, that audience that's there in the mosh pit is just as important to me it is to the bands. I really think like in order to like be successful, you got to like be real. And I think the scene is very real. If you're not, trying, I feel like it's obvious and it's not very welcome.
It's crazy to go into a place you've never been before and be able to have people ask you your name. I went to a show in Bloomington at the Garage, and it was my first time being there. And I had a bunch of people like, "Oh, hi, it's so nice to meet you. I've never seen you here before. My name is blah blah blah." Name
Yeah.
another place that you could do that at. Like, that's, to me, that's crazy, and it's very comforting. Like you said, it's like a security blanket. Like, yeah, I definitely belong here. Everyone belongs here. There's no right or wrong. Just don't be a dick and everyone will be okay with you.
Yeah, I feel like if you give it the opportunity, you can grow from this place very, very, very easily. And I feel like it's given me a lot. I feel like the scene also, I mean, it has its drama, it has its downsides, but I feel like no matter what, the passion of like the scene itself is gonna keep pushing us, and it has. Definitely not gonna stop this year.
No, I don't know. I don't think it could ever stop. I mean, if as long as the
Yeah,
tradition stays right and there's still people
hopefully.
willing to perform locally.
Yeah.
So we talked about a lot of different groups that you've worked with this year, and since you started taking photos and videos for them, what artists or bands in this scene are your favorites right now? Like, I know that there's a lot of really talented people, and I don't mean to ostracize anyone, because I really do love and respect everyone in the scene, but everyone has a favorite.
When I started when I started taking photos in the scene, I was scared like when I started doing it for money, that I would get a gig and I'd go to a show and I'd listen to this band and I'd be like, oh, this band is not very good. I don't enjoy this, but I'm gonna do it anyways because I'm making money. I was worried about that because I have to be passionate about my work in order for me to be confident about my work. And every single time I've been hired, I went to a show and I've been blown away. Like it's crazy the amount of talent in this scene, and it's been really cool. And another thing that we haven't really touched on, you talked about the garage, but Bloomington Normal like is a big part of this scene, whether they know it or not. And a lot of the bands that from there have kind of filled the roster of like favorite Urbana bands, and it's like all people from Bloomington. And it's great because it's like I'm glad that they're getting the highlight. But I'll say for Bloomington, I would say Day Shift is my probably my favorite band. They have
They're
exactly
awesome.
one song on Spotify, and I'm pissed about it. They need to release at least one more because it's sad that you can listen to that song and then there's nothing else. You're just like done. But luckily, some of the guys from Day Shifter and another band, Wide Orbit, they just played at our venue, and they're great. There's a lot of talent coming out of that side, but I feel like on the Urbana side, I feel like historically it'd definitely be Kangaroo Court. Like, I just really enjoy their music on like a fundamental level. It's hard for me to just not like jam out to their music. And I know we already have talked about it, but I do got to give it to Stan Check. I feel like they have just been so good to me in my photo career, and being a part of like the Mirror and like even behind the scenes at the Mirror. It's just like I felt like I have made a connection, and just like the guys at the barn said to me, like, when that all stopped, I'm going to remember this moment. They're going to remember this connection that we've made. And whether that means we're going to be successful together in the future, I'm not sure, but I'm really excited to find out. And that's something that's really cool to me, is that I can enjoy this band so much on a musical level, and then I can also relate to them and be friends with them on a personal level.
I am confident that there's nothing but good things ahead for a lot of people in the scene, including you and all of your great photos and videos. Like I said, that was our last question, but thank you, Austin, for coming on and sharing your story, sharing your experience in the Urbana Champaign scene. Really appreciate you sharing everything. Be sure to give Austin a follow on Instagram at Camera Corley. You can also check out Austin's YouTube channel, which will be linked in the description. I'm not going to read a link during the podcast. It doesn't seem like it'll convert anyone. But if you go to his YouTube, please check out the documentary on the Mirror. I promise you, it's about 20 minutes long, but it is a great intro to the scene. If you're unfamiliar, if you're in the scene, it's a great way to remember the venue itself. You can also check out Austin's work and get in contact with him through his website, www.austinjcorley.com. And just like that, that's our show. You've been hanging out with Clubhouse Chronicles, where the sounds are hot, the stories are hotter, and the vibes absolutely off the charts. Don't forget, hit up at Broken Record Music Club on socials for all the updates, news, and more about this podcast and our label. Why not? We have some really cool artists. We have some pretty cool releases coming up. Give us a check out. Also, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube. These episodes are full video on YouTube, so subscribe and see other stuff that we post. Until next time, keep it loud, keep it proud, and remember, Central Illinois is the place where the music magic happens. Peace.